I met Cody McGuffie in the Hampton community and was amazed by his journey from being a recruiter at Qualcomm to starting e-commerce brands on the side to then launching a SaaS business and scaling from $0 to $5 million ARR in 2 years. Cody is going to share his founder journey, how despite existing solutions already out there, he decided to build Everbee, and how he thinks about building a SaaS business in a bootstrap way. My name is Alexej and I help B2B SaaS founders scale. We drop an episode interviewing up-and-coming SaaS founders once a week. This episode is one of my favorite episodes, as it's not just about how Cody built a really impressive business, but also about the mindset, values, and the lessons he learned before he started the actual business, which all drove to the success he now has. Enough of me rambling, let's dive into the episode. Hey Jody, thanks for joining me on this podcast.
Alexej, good to meet you, man, and good to see you again.
Cool. So for our audience, you are from one of my most favorite cities ever, San Diego, and you basically launched and bootstrapped Everbee from 0 to 5 million ARR in 3 years, and you're gonna tell us the whole story here.
Amazing, man. Yeah, thank you. Happy to share. Happy to help with anyone has similar ambitions. Of course, I haven't figured out everything, but we've certainly figured out a couple things that have worked for us. Was in San Diego. Quick life update. I'm actually in Austin, Texas now. We actually just made the move about a year ago. So super happy to be in Texas now for business reasons, but also for family reasons. And anyway, hopefully whatever I could share today is valuable and helpful for whoever's listening.
Fair enough. Yeah, Austin is my second most favorite city. So that's cool. So maybe before we go, or maybe let's kick off with what does Everbee actually do? And then we actually jump into the founding story and a bit about your background, because it's quite unique given where you are right now.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Cody McGuffie. I'm the founder and CEO of Everbee. We are a leading e-commerce tool platform to help e-commerce sellers make better decisions in their e-commerce business. A lot of our customers are people that sell on Etsy, sell on Amazon, sell on Shopify. And the first problem that we decided to solve was the product research problem, which is when you are an entrepreneur or you have an entrepreneur in your family, your friend group that wants to have an online business, typically the first thing you ask yourself is, what do I sell? And Everbee decided to solve that problem first because we were very passionate about that problem. And we also understood that problem because we've been there before. So that's primarily what Everbee is known for, is its product research suites, product research tools to help people understand what products they should be selling in their store or in their shop. Of course, since launching that, we've evolved into keyword research and listing optimization, and we're going into some really cool like print on demand and other e-commerce stuff. We even have like an Everbee email product that we just released. So the point is, e-commerce audience, e-commerce sellers is who we serve, and we're obsessed with more of their problems than our solutions. So that's a little bit about what Everbee does. Till today, like you mentioned, we're about 3 years old, about 2.5 years old. We've gone from 0 users to well over 500,000 users to date, and it's been a fun ride. So amazing. happy to share.
Amazing, yeah. So you worked at Qualcomm as a senior recruiter, and then at some point you also launched an Amazon store. You don't launch an Etsy store, right? So could you argue that by being in the Amazon ecosystem, where you have quite a few of these software providers, analytics tools, etc., you saw that, in the Etsy ecosystem, there is nothing like that, and therefore you knew there is a need for that product? Or were there already some products and you just thought, you know what, they are all not amazing, let me build a better one?
Yeah, I'm totally a fan of not reinventing the wheel completely, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't think really any successful company or any successful founder or CEO should be trying to reinvent the wheel. That's where a lot of us get caught up. And I've tried to do that before, where I would launch a product, or I'd have this idea and I would go and spend all my time building this idea from scratch. And I'm like, I used to validate ideas like, oh, no one is doing this. And that means that it's a good idea for some reason. And that doesn't validate a good idea. Actually, we should be looking at other companies and what other people are doing, or in other ecosystems and what they're doing, and then try to find the crossover and build the solutions for the actual problems, not just to invent something just to invent something. So to answer your question, yes, I was an Amazon seller, sold on Etsy, sold on Amazon, sold on Shopify, drop shipped, was building funnels. I've done handmade stuff, literally with my hands, learned how to sew, all that stuff. And all that experience has helped with Everbee in so many ways. And mostly what it helped with is one of the things that you mentioned was the confidence that, hey, if it's working over here, it's probably could work over here because this audience is different, but they're very similar in these things. Mm-hmm. And so you try to always pull from other marketplaces, other ecosystems, other software tools to try to make the best solution for the customer. And so yeah, it definitely was a strategic advantage for sure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's cool. And then were there already existing solutions out there? Or, I mean, in the Etsy ecosystem, or were you and some of your competitors almost launching at the same time?
There were some competitors too. Like we were late, I guess you could say. We were late to the market, I would say. There were some tools that were old. They've been around for 5, 6, 7 years that they already established a strong foothold in the market. And then there were some other ones that were like 3 years old that were a little bit more innovative, kind of more ambitious, probably like us, but they were 3 years ahead of us, 2 or 3 years ahead of us. So we had like an uphill climb. We knew that we were kind of starting from the back from that standpoint, but there's advantages to this. You get to see what's working for them and what's not working, and you can kind of look at it from a very, very cool angle, and you just build the stuff that works, and then you make it better. And then you make it better, and then you make it better, and you make it better, and then you just be better. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, we definitely were late. I remember a certain stage that we were in where we had like maybe 1,000 users at the time, and our competitor had like 30,000 users. And I remember being like, having a mental shift that I'm like, not just being halfway in, kind of like as a hobby type of thing, like hopefully this works, to more like a stake in the ground for myself, to being like, no, we're going to crush them. And because when you're ambitious and when you put a stake in the ground and you say there's no turning back, we're going to do this thing, it certainly served us. Now, I'll also say that when I say crush, for anybody that doesn't understand what I mean, is I wasn't saying like put them out of business. It's more like that's the goalpost. We need to go way past that goalpost. Mm-hmm. They don't have to lose for us to win. There's an abundance. But it helped though, putting the stake in the ground and actually making that strategic mindset change. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so confidence is obviously a really important factor when you try to launch a business and build it and scale it. But in your case, you don't have a computer science degree. You never built a software business before. And then again, there were already players providing a solution to this problem. What exactly was it that gave you that confidence that you can, despite being late, still overtake them?
That's a cool question. Super tough question to actually answer in a perfect way. I think there's probably a couple things. I think that we put people on pedestals. We put companies on pedestals to where they're here and we can never achieve that. And I don't really believe in giving anybody too much credit. And I remember when I was playing high school football, there was a coach that said this to us, the whole entire team. And we were going up against a huge, way more powerful, way better team than we were. And I remember everybody's scared, right? If you played high school football, you understand what I mean. You're like, you know that you're going to lose this game and you're going to get crushed. It's just a matter of like how much you get crushed by. And I remember the coach, he was big on this, and he would say, listen, never give anyone too much credit. That was interesting because typically I come from a humble beginnings. I come from modest family. We come, typically people in the US and probably people listening to this come from a very similar background to where you give people credit. You want to, inspire to be them and all this stuff. Great. But there's also this flip there's a switch you can flip to where you're the underdog. You need to flip the switch and say, listen, we can beat them. And so there was that. I think that I fortunately was able to do this and kind of flip that script a little bit and say, just because they're here and we're just starting, we can do it. So I think one, it's belief. And then you need to like double down on this belief that's possible. Also, two, I think I believe that I can figure things out. And I think everybody listening to this probably believes in themselves the same way. Like you're listening to this because you believe you can figure things out. Mm-hmm. So I call it figure it out ability. And I'm sure people have heard this before, but essentially it's, hey, I think I have a high sense of figured out ability, meaning just give me enough time. Give me enough time. I will figure it out. Not because I'm so smart, not because I have so many resources, but because I have time and I have focus. Mm-hmm. And giving me enough time dedicated to focusing on one thing, dude, I'm going to win. It's not even a matter of if it's possible or not. It's just enough time focused on one specific thing. You're going to figure it out. Like Alexej's going to figure out something if he's dedicated to one thing for 10 years. I guarantee he will figure it out, right? And anybody listening to this, it's the truth for them too. So that helped for sure, the focus. And then fourth is probably like giving myself time. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because I have these big ambitions. People listening to this have these big ambitions, but a lot of times we like crunch them into like 1 year goals, 2 year goals, 3 year goals, max, right? Everybody's thinking they want to build the company, sell the company in 1 or 2 years. Everybody wants this. What if we expanded the time horizon? What if we expanded it from instead of 1 year or 2 years? What if we expanded it to 10 years, 15 years? And if you're dedicated to one thing for 10 years, you're going to be the expert. You're going to be the dominant player. Mm-hmm. Because everyone else in the market is not focusing on one thing. They're getting distracted, shiny thing, shiny thing, shiny thing. So if you could simply just be focused, more focused than everybody else, you're going to eventually win in your market. I truly, truly believe this. This has been the case for me. And also, it's just the right way, I believe.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Super interesting. I think avoiding or eliminating limited beliefs is another one, right? Basically, which, it was a limited belief maybe that they are too big, I can't do it. And obviously you didn't even have it. But I think for some other people who listen to that, they might have limiting beliefs, and it's more about eliminating them. Yeah.
Totally. And to be clear, like I'll say, I kind of phrased it to where I didn't have a limiting belief, but there's in real world, there's a million limiting beliefs. There's a million reasons why you shouldn't be successful. I remember having them all the time. I guess what I say is when I tell this story, tell the backstory of it, is it's not that I didn't have the limiting beliefs. I just didn't really listen to them as much. Mm-hmm. I may listen to them 20% of the time, but 80% of the time, I did not listen to them. So I think people hopefully will never listen to this and say, wow, he's got no limiting beliefs, like no fear. It's complete bullshit, right? Mm-hmm. Like I had so much fear. I had so much limiting beliefs. It's just, what do you do with those questions that come up in your head? Do you act on them? Like you have to kind of learn how to get quiet and understand that this is just a thought and it doesn't serve me. Mm-hmm. This other positive thought serves me very well. So that kind of naturally takes over. And I think it's a muscle. It's a habit that eventually we flex long enough. It gets stronger and stronger. And I'm still working on this muscle every day. I mean, I haven't figured it out. I've just figured out certain things. I'm trying to unlock the next thing.
You know what? I think I will go back and actually listen to this podcast myself. It's so motivational. That's awesome. Look, let's jump into a slightly different topic about customer acquisitions and growth. Again, you have a really fascinating story because you basically bootstrapped and grew like crazy to 5 million ARR in less than 3 years, 2.5, 2. How did you do it? How did you acquire your first customer, and then how did you manage to grow so fast after that?
Sure. Good question. um, I guess fortunately I had domain expertise in e-commerce, right? So I have this like other things. I was always looking for advantages when I was launching a SaaS product. Uh, my first background was in real estate while I was doing a corporate job, and then it led me to e-commerce, which eventually led me to SaaS. It wasn't super clear cut like any story. It's not clear cut like that. It was more like, I think I want to be in software because it seems like if I want to live a big life and I want to do big things, if I want to add a lot of value to the world, it seems like most of the founders that are out there in the world, most of the people, successful people, seems like they're in technology. Okay, well, I need to be there. So first, like you need to play in the right game. You know, a lot of times we're playing in the wrong game. You could be the best at what you do, but if you're playing on the wrong field, like, dude, you're capping your potential. So for me, is I wanted to get on the right field first, which is software. To me, that was the right field. High multiples, high scalability, high impact to the world. You could touch a lot of people's lives in a very relatively short period of time, and that is all exciting for me. Also, very high gross margins. Also, like you can iterate very quickly, so you can really transform a product into something that's nothing into something that's very special. And so that excited me, all those things. So I needed to get on the right field first. Then it's a matter of, okay, well, which one has the most likelihood of succeeding is the question, right? Because we could all build a software product, but if no one wants it, then who gives a shit? So I launched probably 3 or 4 different projects. I call them projects that didn't succeed. Like they were just like, didn't spend a lot of money, less than $100 to kind of launch these projects, to give them a try, to see what I like. And that's when I was actually considering raising money. I was like going down that path of like, should I raise money? Like, I want to do something big. In order to do something big, you need to raise a lot of money, don't you? And like, that was the belief that I had. So went down that path a little bit, didn't raise any money. And then I just had a running list of ideas. You know, just like which ones could work, which ones do I have the best founder product fit. I'm sorry. Which one fits with me mostly, given my skill sets, my domain expertise, my ambitions, what I want out of my life, my family. And so Everbee was obviously not called Everbee at the time. It was just this little tool that I thought, you know, we can build, and I think it'd be cool. But there was another dozen ideas on this list. And eventually you have to get off the sidelines and you have to play the game, right? So eventually I'm just like, well, I'm gonna build something, and I'm gonna build something in the next 6 months. And so Everbee was that something. And what we did is we launched the first version. I'm sorry, we hired an agency to build the very first version. That took about 6 months to build the very first version, so version 1. At that point, and feel free to stop me anywhere. I could talk more about that specifically. But we built the first version. We launched in July of 2021 and got initial traction. Had a little bit of proof of concept, meaning it was like a couple of users using it. It was enough for us to be like, I think there's something here. I wasn't quitting my e-commerce business. I wasn't wrapping all that stuff up yet. You know, it was more just like, I think this could be a play. Maybe I can get to like 10,000 a month. That'd be cool. Then I can actually work on my big projects. I can work on my big deal. I can go raise money and do it the right way. And so this is how I thought. And then built version 2 through another agency. And then eventually eventually hired our own team. And now we have a full-time team of 28 people full-time. And we'll probably be 60 by in the next 12 months. So I don't know. It's fun to recap on the story. I'm sure there's a lot of learnings in there for myself personally, if I could listen to this.
So let's dig deeper a bit into the stage where, so you're building, let's say the MVP, right? And it takes time to build, you know, a working product, you know, 6 months or more sometimes. How did you actually get the very first customer?
Oh yeah, I sidestepped that question first. How did I get my very first customer? When we were building the MVP for the 6 months, again, I have this e-commerce background at this point. I'm building funnels for my e-commerce businesses and stuff like this. So I decided, hey, I'm just going to build a funnel for Everbee, and I'm going to see if I can get like a profitable acquisition strategy going on while I'm in development stage. So that's what we did. As soon as we started developing Everbee, I just needed some sort of designs, some prototypes, some pictures, something. And I built a funnel to get leads, get emails. That's all I was trying to do. Email would subscribe, they'd opt in. I would give them something for free. For me, I gave them product research stuff because that was our main product feature. I did product research for them manually. And then when they when they put their email in, I literally just I delivered a Google Doc of 1,000 products that I researched manually.
Wow.
Right there, I have their email and I know their intent. Their intent was to go after product research for this specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that when my software is built, when it's completed, that I can just, instead of using the Google Doc, I would just plug in my software. There you go. Free access. Boom. There it is. I already know it's going to work because the intent is so strong of exactly what they're looking for. I just did it manually at first, and then I did something that's automated later on. So as soon as I got this rolling, I just did a Facebook ad to a landing page to an email opt-in. As soon as I kind of got some data on this, okay, I run $10 a day, $20 a day, eventually like $50 a day, probably my max. I was like, oh wow, I'm acquiring leads or users at about $3 per user. I'm like, okay, this is cool. So then pretty soon, it doesn't take a super genius to realize, okay, what if I created a financial model to say, what if I had a software product, and I charged $20 a month? Mm-hmm. What is my ARPU? I didn't know these terms at the time, but like, what are they going to be paying me? What's my conversion rate? You could start making some assumptions. You could start creating the future based on the past. And that's super exciting. That gets really fun because as soon as you have something that works and you have some solid assumptions that you know that work, you can now build a model as if those assumptions are always true. It's so, so special. And so that's exactly what we did. We eventually developed the software. I promise I'll get to your answer. We developed the software. We released it. And essentially, we had an email list now of probably like a few hundred people. Maybe it was like 500 people at this point. And just simply started nurturing this email audience, and eventually just released it. And eventually, we released a payment gate. It gated a couple features, and got our first conversion just like that. And it was probably about 3 months, probably. No, it was probably 2 months after launch, like officially release. And then that was when we got our first customer. That was like validation. That was like, wow, I think we can do something here. And, and then we just kind of kept iterating from there.
That's cool. So initially it was actually almost like a freemium, but to get additional features, you actually have to convert to be a premium, a paid customer, right?
Yeah, for our first customer, actually, if I recall, we actually did a credit card required free trial.
Okay.
And we did a 5-day free trial, I believe. Credit card required. I wasn't really trying to optimize the experience at the time. I wasn't really trying to optimize anything other than I wanted to prove to myself that will someone pay for this? Yeah. And the fastest way to do this is to just simply make them pay. I could have done no trial. I could have done this, but I just wanted to do trial. It made more sense for me. I wanted to sell something as free. Also, there's a lot of power in free. And so I wanted to sell something that was free. And so simply just did that. Credit card required. Did it. Cool. Got one customer. I think it was maybe a couple days later, got another customer. And then you start realizing that there's like a lot of fraud. There's a lot of like, I didn't know this stuff. Payment failures due to credit card, just free trial, people taking advantage. And I really, at the end of the day, I always wanted to be freemium anyway. Like I love like giving free value. This is something that I just fundamentally believe in, just giving a lot of information for free. So we eventually we switched. We went to development mode again for like another 3 months and actually made the product freemium. And then we relaunched it again. And then it got really fun because then we got to see like a lot of the hyper growth, I guess you could say, if you call it hyper growth.
I see. Yeah, because then everybody joins, and then at some point they realize, oh yeah, I need more features, and then they just have already the trust, already use a product, and they just pay. Yeah. Uh-huh. And it's so fascinating because I was rereading this blog post about how a lot of the 100 million ARR software companies are more going after the deers and the elephants. Do you know this piece? Versus the mice and the rabbits.
No, I don't.
Okay, so it was actually,
Oh,
by one of the partners. It's a German software fund called Point Nine, and you basically have kind of like an X and a Y X, and it's basically if you go after mice, that's like your RPU of $100 a year, and an elephant is, if I'm not mistaken, like $1 million a year, right? And so if you go after mice, you need, I don't know, like 100,000 of them or whatever, right? And if you go after elephants, you only need like 100 of them, right? And the elephants, because they're enterprise customers, they don't have the crazy churn the mice have, right? And so therefore, you need fewer people or fewer customers. And I mean, usually, of course, it takes way longer to get an elephant than a mice, but over 5-year horizon, the lower churn rate works in your advantage, for example. And obviously also the higher RPU, which is also like quite a good proxy for, let's say, ACV, right? So, but again, without going into too many terminologies and buzzwords, obviously your market is huge, and so you can easily build 100 million ARR business by going after first Etsy merchants and then maybe other marketplace merchants, right? That's I guess the strategy.
yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so much truth to what you said about the elephants and the mice. I think I agree with this 100%. I think there's also another things that I kind of put in this decision making of, hey, do we want to go up market or stay, serving our audience? Is what do I want to do? Like, what do I want? Do I want to spend my time going after big corporate accounts? I personally, literally, Cody does not want to do that. It's not exciting for me. And part of building this business that I love is something I want it to excite me every day. And so I want to also love the people that I'm serving. I want to be able to connect with them very deeply. So for me to go and like spin up like an enterprise model and do that, yes, we could do this. Is it in our future? Of course it is, right? Every business should do this at some point. But it's also like I don't put so much emphasis or value on that, because I also feel like the more passion and the more excitement that you have towards your business and towards your core audience, the more successful you are likely to be, simply because you just really, really enjoy showing up and serving them. And so for me, if we were to come and say, hey, I'm going to go build an enterprise model, and I kind of be like, long sales cycles, yes, higher value, ACV will be higher, churn will be lower, all beautiful things. But I think there's a stage for it. And I just don't think we're quite at that stage yet. I think maybe around 20 million ARR, maybe even 15 million ARR, we'll probably consider stuff like that. I think it'd be wise. But yeah, I don't know. My point with that is it's interesting. I'd say that anybody listening to this, it's like, you can do that, but also I would consider your goals. Like, what's the goals of being a business? Are you trying to simply grow a business, exit the business? If that's in the shortest period of time, then you probably should go B2B. You probably should go B2B. But if you're like, hey, I want to build a very, very large business, very impactful business, very, very long-term business, I would say it probably doesn't really matter as much. I would go for more impact to your audience. Focus on that.
Yeah. I mean, found the product fit and found the market fit are so underrated, right? But they are so critical, because it is a marathon, it's not a sprint, and you really, really need to love the audience, and your clients, basically, you need to love them.
Man, if you don't, I don't know how people do it. I know there's people they're successful. I know for sure they're successful and they don't have that passion towards their audience, but damn, it seems hard, and also seems a little bit, I don't know, soul crushing a little bit because it's just it's a hard journey by itself. And if you don't even really enjoy who you're building for, then shit, it's going to be even harder, because you have to force yourself to kind of work every day. But if you can find something that you kind of enjoy talking about every single day and really double down on that, and it's easier to play the long game at that point. And when you play a long game, you're more likely to win.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I think that's where being bootstrapped comes in and stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. And we definitely touch on that topic as well. But let me jump back for a second on your growth journey. So Facebook ads, to an email conversion landing page. Then you start nurturing, start sending out emails. You do more Facebook ads. What were the other growth channels you used? Because, on the webinar we ran on SaaS businesses growing via YouTube, I actually showed your YouTube channel as one of the successful examples. You also have a podcast.
Oh, cool.
Could you walk us through, let's say, your repertoire of growth channels, but also maybe like how did they, the sequence of them, right? Like a historical sequence in a very short period of time, which was very successful.
Sure. So for us, we looked at it very holistically, meaning like, hey, who our audience is, hey, and where do they hang out? Where does our audience hang out? Where do they spend the most time? Where do they ask the questions? Where do they struggle? Where do they reach out for community? Step one. For us, it was Facebook Marketplace. I'm sorry, Facebook groups. They were in Facebook groups. That's where they would go for community. They would go to ask questions. 2 was YouTube. They would go and they would type in YouTube and they say, how do I do this for Etsy? How do I do this for Shopify? How do I find a winning product? For us, we knew that was YouTube. So pretty simple. It doesn't take a genius to ask those 2 questions and then say, well, we just need to be there. We need to be there where they're looking and help them achieve their goals. So we put ourselves in a service position. Let's serve them what they're looking for. So what do? We start a Facebook group. We start to get people together and start building community. That's one. We did that from the very beginning. Before we even launched Everbee, we started to accumulate these people inside of a group. 2, we started building a YouTube channel. Not like I'm not a YouTuber by any means, but it was enough to where it's like, I need to start pushing content. We need to start investing in this content thing that's going to live on forever. And so we started doing this. We have a podcast. I would say the podcast is more of it's a fun thing for us to do. And it's got side benefits, but it doesn't lead to growth, I would say, for us. It's more of it gives me a reason to connect very deeply with our customers because I invite them on and they tell their stories. It's very cool. Mm-hmm. It gives me a reason to connect with partners, with other people in the industry. It gives me a reason for us to connect. And I love that. So there's a lot of side benefits to it, but it does not lead to like user acquisition really by any means. It does establish a deeper relationship with me, with Everbee, for a customer to actually, which will obviously increase the likelihood of them converting, but really it's not a great channel for growth. And then there's SEO and paid traffic. Facebook ads and Google are our primary our paid channels. Nothing crazy there. Just it's done okay for us. It's been fine. We ran that for like 3 years. Mm-hmm. And then SEO, we've talked about this before. SEO hasn't really been a primary channel for us, not because it couldn't be. It's more because I didn't have direct expertise in SEO and nobody really from our team did either. So we kind of just always put that on the back burner. Again, just kind of doubling down on what we're good at, what we know works, and just doubling down on that. Now, if you were to stack rank these growth channels in a way that is valuable, I'd probably say at the beginning stage, Facebook, Google ads to a funnel to sign up. 1, because we can we can measure it very, very cleanly. Long-term strategy was probably our YouTube play because it was a little hard to attribute the direct sales and direct conversions from our YouTube channel. Like we didn't really have a lot of experience with that, but it was something to where I knew it was working. Like we knew something was working over there in the YouTube space. I didn't know exactly what it was and what content hit, but I knew that something was working. So we doubled down on that. Facebook group, we just kind of kept it going. It wasn't really a growth strategy. It wasn't like, you couldn't really pour things on it, but it was just a nice thing to always be funneling people back into the group. YouTube and partnerships is probably the coolest thing, because when you start to build relationships with people in the industry, your Dream 100, so to speak, or your people that are talking to your audience also, if you could build relationships with them through a podcast or something, then they typically will start talking about your product to their audience. And this is a beautiful, beautiful thing when you can unlock this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's certainly been a huge channel for us. Partnering with creators and influencers or educators in our space has been so fun, because there's a couple benefits. One, you get to help them be more successful by, hopefully affiliate commissions and helping them, provide a greater life for themselves. Two, you get feedback on the product from them. If they're not willing to represent your product or talk about your product, that's an issue. Fix the issue. Mm-hmm. Three, obviously, potentially you get traffic. And then you also get four, you get content, right? You can use this content and it becomes this great thing that lives on forever and it compounds over time. Mm-hmm. Those are probably our main growth strategies, most growth channels, I mean. Mm-hmm. Of course, we got other stuff, little experiments that we run daily, and we have ongoing experiments all the time at this point, but those are our strategies.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Very cool. Just maybe on YouTube, because again, so few SaaS businesses are actually doing it successfully. And of course, there are so many different ways to run a YouTube channel successfully as well. And you mentioned you hired somebody who will be the new face for your YouTube channel, because obviously it's very, very time consuming. But can you talk about any metrics or any, how do you calculate even the ROI, or what do you look for when you say, is that video going to be successful? Is it okay, it gets a lot of views, and then how do you track conversions from that? Obviously, you have an affiliate link almost to yourself, back to yourself, or how do you do that?
It's exactly what we do. Yeah, we just have an affiliate link back to ourselves, and we just kind of measure, if we pay someone to do YouTube videos, YouTube channels, then we know their salary. Mm-hmm. And we would just simply say, okay, we pay them, $10,000 a month. Okay, look at our affiliate commission from from ourselves is $1,000 a month. Okay, well, it's obviously negative right now, but could we see the future where it could start to break even, mm-hmm. be a profitable channel? Yes, right, as long as it's growing. So it sounds so basic, and because it actually is. We don't really overthink the attribution too much with YouTube, because the reality is, people, if you could see my video, it's people around an orbit around you, and customers are floating around this, and you have to touch them multiple times before they get sucked into your orbit. So they're not in orbit yet, they're actually outside, and eventually you kind of touch them, and eventually they kind of suck in. Mm-hmm. Do it over and over again, and eventually it turns into a funnel, and you can start to predict it and project on it in the future.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So let's move on to the topic of bootstrapping versus VC. You obviously spent a lot of time in California. You were very close to where all the VCs hang out, etc. Is it because you knew already that you want to play the long-term game and you want to build something, let's say, in your own time, and you want to build something big where you can be focused on that rather than being rushed, that you decided to not raise? Now, the question, of course, is that most people only know about these things once they raised, burned through it, had a burnout, whatever, didn't have a successful exit. The next time they actually bootstrap it, how did you know about or how were you so certain that you want to bootstrap it without having raised ever before?
Yeah, good question. I didn't know at first, to be honest. I didn't know first. I read books on raising, and I wanted to understand the details in raising and why you should and why you shouldn't. Surprisingly, there's actually not a lot of books or content out there talking about why you shouldn't do it. It's mostly about how you should do it. And so I kind of got sucked into this belief of if you want to build software, you need to raise. You need to raise, otherwise you're not doing something big, huh? You must be very small-minded if you're not raising money. If you didn't raise $100,000 if you're angel and $1 million in your seed, then somehow you are very, very small-minded. Like, why not go big? And like this type of mentality, I got sucked into it for a brief period of time. And eventually fortunately, I just realized that I think maybe I got the confidence that, why do I actually need this money? Like, why, if I build a solid business, I shouldn't really need money from anybody. I should just be self-propelling, and it should build itself with its own cash flow. Generally speaking, of course, depending on the business. This is the way that I looked at it. I also believe that my real estate experience of being an investor in real estate previous to my corporate career, actually during my corporate career, like I was flipping houses, my wife and I, we started a real estate investment company, which we didn't talk about, but I did like take on a lot of debts. I did take on a lot of, not investors. I had a couple of investors at the time, but mostly debt, other people's money. And I knew that it didn't really feel great for me to have other people's money inside of my business. I didn't love this feeling. Mm-hmm. Even if I did believe that I was a good person, I was going to make it right and do well by them, I didn't love that feeling. I really love the feeling of freedom. And I think anybody loves the feeling of freedom, like listening to this. I like the freedom of doing what I want. I want the feeling of doing things when I want, with whoever I want. Mm-hmm. And I love options. Once I take someone's money, a couple options are gone. Like a couple options are just off the table, pretty much. You could argue one way or the other, like you could sell the company and do whatever you want with the company, even if an investor comes in. But I know that I wouldn't want that. It wouldn't be the option for me. It'd be like, go big, get them a great ROI, or bail out. And so for me, I want the option to do those things, what I want, when I want, with who I want, whenever I want. And taking money just limited those options right away. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that was a big factor in my decision to not do it. There was a point where I did strongly consider taking on capital. We had about 2,500 MRR, and we actually were doing pretty good, right? From some people's standards, we had traction. We were bootstrapped completely. We took on zero capital outside of my own personal capital, my wife and I's, and we were running out of personal runway. And so we saw a very clear ending to the path, and we were about 3 months to go before our personal runway is gone, like our personal savings. At this time, by the way, I'm all in on Everbee in my e-commerce business. Christina, my wife, we have one kid, one on the way. She's not working full-time either because we already quit our jobs in the past. So we're living off savings. And by the way, the house that we lived in at that time, we sold that house in order to start Everbee. I forgot to talk about this. It's a very important piece actually to the puzzle. Mm-hmm. Is we sold the house, used the savings or the amounts of that house, which is about $100,000. We stuffed it in savings, and we decided to live off of that money until we got Everbee off the ground. And so it was just burning. So we did have capital. It was just our own personal capital. And there was a point where we decided to consider raising money. We went through this what do you call it? Incubator? Mm-hmm. Or accelerator program thing, mm-hmm. to where they would give you some value. Mm-hmm. Yeah, accelerator. Mm-hmm. And got the interview, got accepted into it, got the offer, which was very cool. It was a very validating experience to get that offer. And then we decided to decline it. But it wasn't easy to decline it. It was actually a really challenging thing to decline this because it was about $110,000. If I recall, it was of cash for about 11% of the company. Mm-hmm. And I actually got a lot of advice to actually take this offer. And actually I was strongly going to take it, not really because of the money as much, even though I did need it. It was mostly about like the group of people that I'd be surrounded with supposedly, and like the mentorship, and I'd probably get all that stuff is very important. But I got advice from I guess you'd call him a mentor, a guy that I was starting to build a relationship with, who was a CEO. And he's raised a lot of money in the past. He was a CEO in the Silicon Valley. And he looked at the term sheet with me, and he was just like, I don't really like this deal. I would change this, change this. It seems like they're kind of doing this. And not that they were doing bad things. It was just more so it wasn't a good deal for my ambitions.
Yeah.
It was a good company. It was a good accelerator. But it just wasn't right for me, and decided to pull out. And boy, I'm grateful for that decision to pull out. Or decline is a better way to put it.
Amazing. Amazing. Before we jump into the quickfire questions, I mean, hearing your story, it looks as if you almost avoided all the mistakes, normal founders actually do, right? Now, maybe you haven't discussed some of the, mistakes you did, but still, it's so impressive to get to 5 million ARR within, 2.5 years. Did you have some sort of like amazing advisors or somebody in your family who could, give you some amazing advice, or did you have, I don't know, like a coach? How did you manage to do that?
Yeah, thank you, man, for that. I really appreciate that. It's a compliment. I certainly don't think that we avoided every problem. Like there was a lot of problems, so many actually, that were keeping me up all night. And there were so many late nights. There still are. Less now because we have a team, and we have an amazing team with an amazing development team, product team, everybody, customer support team. But it wasn't like that forever. Like when we started, I was doing customer support. I was full-time customer support, handling tickets, every single thing. It was through me. When I was product, I was technical. I wasn't the technical like our engineer, but I was certainly making technical decisions probably when I shouldn't have been. We went through so many hurdles. One of them just being like, hey, how do we make sure that we stay in business financially? How do we make sure that the business has money, but also I have this personal issue too, whereas like I also need money to live. So what do I do here? That alone by itself is such a major challenge of like trying not to milk, like your most precious resource and draw from it. So we had to those decisions were very, very challenging. It certainly did make a lot of mistakes along the way, but the principles I think were strong that eventually it kind of like smoothed out to where it looks like a easy success story, but it's actually not at all. Oh, I swear you had a question in there that I totally missed. How do we do it? Did I answer that?
Yeah, pretty much. Except I guess you didn't have any, special advisors or family members or coaches who basically you hire to ask
Gotcha.
a lot of questions.
I didn't have any coach. I didn't have any advisors like that specifically paid to give me advice on or give equity to or anything like that. Which it's funny because I was actually searching for that for a long time. What I did do, I'll tell you what I did do. I'm extremely obsessed with reading, and not just reading just for the sake of reading. I read with purpose, and I'll only read books that are going to add value to me in that like immediate 1, 2, 3, 5 years. And because of that, it filters out so many non-related books. It filters out all this unrelated things that I could be learning and consuming. I just simply learn about the thing that I want to be doing in the next 1 to 5 years. And so because that's the case, I feel like I have so many mentors, I have so many advisors, and they're all the authors of all those books. I truly look at like those authors of my books are very, very, very close, like consultants to me in a weird spiritual way sometimes. And now if I can get this advice from somebody in person, somebody that's in my network, I will always jump at this opportunity, right? Of course, like you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with most. And so there's certainly been people around me that I kind of like will pull from. There's friends that are on my same level that I'll kind of like, hey, what do you think about this conversion rate? And he knows more about, on-page optimization than I do. And then he'll be like, here, do this. Consider this. What are the questions? And then I'm always kind of like pulling from people that are better than me in these certain areas because I'm certainly not the expert. So what I'll do is I just search for people that are better than me at certain things, and I try to just extract data from them and apply it to mine. And obviously I try to give them value in my expertise in certain things, of course, too, in exchange. I think this sounds so trivial, sounds like so obvious, but it's a funny thing that if you do this repeatedly over a long enough period of time, it compounds into something that's actually very meaningful to the market. And so that's one thing that we figured out. My family, you asked like friends or family that have done things like this. No, I'm the first in my family that's done something like this. Now, there's certain things that I pull from my family that are like being a great father, great grandfather, great brother, good uncle, good family members, like things that are very, very tightly. I'm very passionate about being these things too. They're experts. Same principle. They're experts in those fields, and I pull from them. But specifically in business, for SaaS business, nobody in my family has done this thing. So I've always had to like reach out for external sources for this information.
Yeah, it's an excellent answer. Yeah, awesome. Let's go into the quickfire questions. So, given you mentioned you read a lot, what one book recommendation do you have for SaaS founders out there?
Damn, that's such a good question. Only one. Okay, depending on the stage, it is. Let me just look to make sure I don't butcher the title. So 1 minute, because I want to make sure I get this right because it is a very impactful book for me. The book called Working Backwards, and it is in Working Backwards: Insights, Stories, and Secrets from Inside Amazon, from Colin Breyer and Bill Carr. Highly, highly recommend this book to anyone that's probably a little bit has revenue in their company and they're trying to actually scale their teams and scale their systems and think bigger. Because at first, when you're starting out, from you're going to 0 to 1, you need to read books from going from 0 to 1. Right? You don't need to be reading books from going from 1 to a million. You need to be reading books from 0 to 1. Personally, this is my current favorite book because I'm not going from 0 to 1 anymore. We're trying to go from like 1 to 10, and this is a perfect book for me for my purpose.
Awesome. Who do you want to see on this podcast?
I mean, of course, I want to see like the Reid Hoffmans on this podcast. I want to see the Jason Lemkins on this podcast. Okay. So shout out those guys. You need to get those guys on here. I would say Jason Lemkin, man. He I don't know him personally. At some point, I'm sure I'll cross paths with him. But what the value that I get from him is pretty high. I'll give a shout out. So anybody that's not following Jason Lemkin, you probably need to follow him. Follow him on LinkedIn. He's just a simple follow on LinkedIn, and you'll get a lot of value out of his posts. There's actually, surprisingly, he posts pretty regularly on LinkedIn. And dude, there's some nuggets that I pull away from there that I implement every day. And the things that I've implemented years ago that are still apparent today, in our business. He spits gold. The only thing that he does that might actually resonate better with your audience is he's mostly B2B, which is perfect probably for your audience listening to this. I'm not necessarily B2B traditional speaking. I'm more like B to very small b. So not everything that I take from him applies, but still the principles are solid. Highly, highly recommend that he comes on the podcast, man. Get him.
Yeah. No, he's great. He was on Lenny's podcast right the other day, talking about sales and hiring that team. So yeah, that was super solid.
Hey, send him this podcast. Send him this episode, and then be like, "Hey, you got a shout out that you should come on the podcast."
Right? That actually works. We got some good speakers lined up using this technique. Actually,
that's awesome.
Awesome. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Gosh, you'll have to cut this because of my long pause. I have so many running through my brain. How you do one thing is how you do everything.
Nice one. All right, and then
it is. Yeah. Go ahead. I was going to extrapolate on that, but it's okay. Hopefully it hits home.
Yeah, it's very, very clear. Yeah, and it's deep as well. So yeah, I think people can just sit on it and think about it. Cool. Final question: one entrepreneur or important person who you admire.
I admire so many people, of course, for different things that they do in their life, in their business life, or what they are as a father, what they are as a parent, or what they are as a leader. But in the business context, my answer would probably be, gosh, I mean, of course, it sounds so obvious, but Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, these guys are leaders in big thinking and systems thinking, and mostly I admire them for their leadership and figuring things out and doing big things. I admire so many other people, of course, but specifically, I don't know them personally. I don't have to. I just see the results, speak for themselves. There's a lot of inspiration, a lot of admiration that can come from that.
Awesome. Look, it's been super fun, super interesting. I would say it's probably the most interesting episode I've done so far. And I will honestly listen to it myself again. So thank you so much.
Dude, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it too. Hopefully it adds value to whoever's listening. And I would say the final advice I would give to anybody listening is, this is probably one of my favorite quotes actually, is don't take advice from anybody that's not, at least where you want to be or more. So if you're listening to this and you're higher than 5 million ARR, you should probably take what I say with a very small grain of salt. But if you do want to get to where, at least to the stage that I was talking about, hopefully there's some value in there that you can extract.
Where can people find you? How can they reach you?
I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not very active. To forewarn anyone over there, you'll probably be disappointed with the content or the lack of content that I push out. I actually deleted my Instagram app from my phone just because I do believe in the power of focus. But I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, and you can find me there. Yeah, find me on probably those. Those are probably the best places.
Amazing, awesome. Look, it's been fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you.
To finish off this episode, a little promotion from our end. Neoptima is an award-winning marketing agency for B2B SaaS businesses. We work with companies backed by YC, Sequoia, Carlyle, Lightspeed Ventures, Northzone, and many other top VCs and PE investors. We work with venture-backed, private equity-owned, and bootstrapped SaaS businesses all around the world. Reach out to us and book a call in the description below so we can optimize your growth journey. If you have a fellow founder, if you have a team member, if you are part of a Slack group, Telegram, or WhatsApp group with other founders that could get value from this episode, please share this episode with them. We want to help as many founders as possible to scale their business. Thank you for joining us on this journey. See you in the next episode.